Hey everyone, J-Rod Place here. Excuse the voice if I come across a little raspy and you've heard my videos before. I'm getting past a little bit of a respiratory illness and, I'm going to sound a little bit gravelly, and I'm not doing this on purpose. I'm not trying to do the Batman voice, I swear. This is just how I sound right now for the time being. But I did want to make a video just because of the timing. I wanted to make sure I didn't make it too late past some of the marathon controversy that's going on, really all the marathon controversy. Everything about marathon is basically a controversy. Do I even want to save marathon? Because this video, again, is how I would save Marathon if Bungie hired me to put together like kind of a vision of what Marathon should be and what a game that people would play, in my opinion, right? And another reason for the timing that this would be a good time to make a pivot for Bungie on Marathon is that the CEO of the company making Borderlands 4 is starting his own fire and kind of diverting gamers' attention. They found like a new thing to attack for the most part, kind of the mob that kind of goes from place to place with a little bit of the outrage, which is rightfully so on Marathon. Like, I'm not saying Marathon doesn't deserve it. Marathon deserves everything it gets. Bungie diverted resources from Destiny that should have made that game more impressive and more playable and shouldn't have had these dead moments. And Mr. We don't want to, over deliver is now at the helm of all of this at VP. So that's another mistake. These guys at the top, Pete Parsons and this guy, I can't even remember his name, Mr. Over Delivery is what we're going to call him, is now running the company, right? And they're making those mistakes. If they wanted to save their investment in the company and they wanted to get out of the way of the success of Marathon, because that's all they have to do is use what's already there and just let gamers be gamers, the devs that are gamers make the game the way that it should be made, get out of the way of their own success, this game will thrive. And I'll go and kind of show you how with my vision of that. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the scale of which they are trying to build the game. Because to me, they're thinking too small. Yes, the extraction portion is a niche, but if it was just one component to the game and not the whole game, then it could work. It could live. And the reason I say that is because they have a really unused asset, even though they're going to use it as a quote unquote map, the marathon ship itself. If you know the lore, the marathon is a moon. It's Deimos, and they actually took Deimos and terraformed it into a full ship. And so that's such a cool destination that has so much intrigue. There's so many layers of lore that can be placed on that platform, on that area as like a destination, kind of like how you have destinations in Destiny. If they expanded on that, that would make this game so much more playable for PvE players, for example. So the fact that they have this staging ground of Marathon and they're wasting it as just a map, like a little layer that you're going to run side to side and pick stuff up, that's a travesty, and that needs to stop if they're going to make sure that this game succeeds. It can't just be a map. So, having said that, I pose the question, what if Marathon were not just one game, but two games intertwined with each other? You have your PvP extraction mode that's currently the form that you have right now with improvements, of course. But if that mode was there to feed the real game or the PvE side of the game, which to me would be the marathon ship created very similar to Aencrad from Sword Art Online, which is a 100-floor community dungeon. And if you don't know the lore behind Sword Art Online, the TLDR is players are trapped into a VR world and they have to clear these 100 floors of the Aencrad without dying, because if they die in the game, they die in real life. And then they can clear and log out and live their lives, whoever's left of it, right? However long that takes. And so if you had something similar to that, a similar concept, this large ship that you would have to then clear as 100 floors, and you had to do it in a way that the community works together to unlock floors as time goes on in the game, then that combination of the two, I think, would be explosive, because you have the incentive now to go into the extraction, and then you have your PvE, which is going to be clearing the dungeons that are each floor for Marathon. So the underlying lore, for example, and the enemy in this situation that you kind of build upon is always going to be the working Cacunter, which is a crazy name, and it's a name that was thought of back when creatives were creative, right? This is old school Marathon, like back Doom days, long time ago. Many people who were watching this video weren't even born then when the working Cacunter was created. But the working Cacunter is basically the Marathon version of Destiny's Winnower. It's more like a Void Lord from a Lovecraft universe than our version that we kind of have of the Winnower, which is like this overall entity that is kind of part of space time. It's like the light and the dark, essentially, like the two things that collide to make space in Destiny. Whereas where the working Cacunter is kind of this always present thing, like a time bomb that resets anytime it wakes up a timeline, because it'll create chaos around it in an uncontrolled manner that causes the universe to collapse in on itself and it starts over again. So the way that Marathon, the story works, and if you want to keep up with the story, you want to get an idea on what that is like, there's a creator that I watched that I really liked his videos and the way he put it, named Mandalore Gaming. 2 years ago, he did a series on Marathon, Pathways into Darkness, Marathon 2, and explained kind of how they operate, how the working character operates in creating new timelines so that you have these things that are happening in the game that are playable, that are happening alongside each other that don't necessarily have to jive with the lore. Like each timeline has its own lore, and it kind of frees up that plot point, that plot hole situation, as long as you can track it properly, which was the hard thing to do because back then the internet was very new. It wasn't AI. We didn't have a way to chart these things, so you had to really put like a lot of time and effort into just lining up what timeline you're in through each of the levels, and it was very creatively done, but not creative in the sense of it was mystifying and intriguing, more like head scratching and kind of like a drug induced conversation that you were trying to decipher, somebody who's a little too drunk to speak clearly, but they're speaking words and you're going to have to try to make sense of them. That's kind of how the lore was delivered in some of the terminals throughout Marathon, and you can see that in the videos for Mandalore. But once you figured it out and you realized that that's what was happening, and that every time you failed to stop the working Cactuar, it resets the timeline. So having that, the overall overarching enemy, would then create a situation where the Marathon ship that is in our current universe that we're playing in has the technology to put the forest technology on their planet, the location of it, and how to use it. To that they were able to at one time in the past, just to reiterate, they were able to one time in the past put the working Cactuar back to sleep for another period of time, effectively staving off everybody's destruction. That is held at the very top level of the Marathon ship, and we as runners are tasked to then go down to Tau Ceti and to all the other maps that are available and gather resources that are required to unlock each of the levels throughout weeks of play, and then getting to that floor 100 so that then we can go and engage with this other area that would be like an in-game area later on in the life cycle of Marathon. You know, like when we're talking like a Light and Darkness saga, like at the very end, you go through that saga and then you can stop the working Cactuar. So like that's the groundwork, right? That's the background. That's the lore you can lay the layers on top of. And what you can do then is every time you have your unlock of the boss area of the dungeon for that week or that time period, however you want to cut it up, you can take either 3 players, a group of 3 players, or a group of 6 players into a dungeon or raid like scenario about the size of a raid lair in Destiny. If you remember what it was like to have a raid lair off of the Leviathan, they were kind of bite-sized raids that were not necessarily dungeons, but not necessarily raids. They were these quick, action-packed fights, back to back to back, and you were able to get in, get the action in, get your loot, and get out in a reasonable time. You didn't have to set aside like an hour and a half of wipes and tries and all of that. You could knock it out in 20, 25, 30 minutes. And so it's bite-sized enough that you would not interrupt the time of the people going to want to play PvP to then have to like slog through an hour and a half raid, full on raid. And you have 100 of these things, mind you, so you have to somehow kind of put a limit on how long these things are so that you can have the development time to create these 100 floors. And if you mapped it out, let's say, I mean, again, I hate time gating, but if you mapped it out 1 floor a week, then what you're looking at is roughly 2 years if you find a way to fill the final weeks a little bit longer with time. So you have roughly 2 years of a timeline to develop the later floors while you have the earlier floors ready to go. And then you can also balance those floors in difficulty based on how the players handle the lower floors as they get higher and they get either larger in scale or more difficult. You can have a lot of cool encounters, and I'll give some examples kind of toward the end of what I would consider like a cool encounter mechanic, very World of Warcraft style, and you can entertain people on both sides. You can entertain the PvP players who are there for PvP, but still want to have a little bit of fun in the dungeon, for example, in the quick dungeon, and then go right back to their PvP. And then you can have the people who only want a PvE who can contribute in their way through the PvE side. And so I'll kind of discuss how I believe that can work. The first thing is first, you would need to make sure that you have a solo, duo, and trio only modes. You have solo modes where only solo players queue in and there's no fill. You have a duo mode where only duo players queue in, no fill, and a trio mode where only trio players queue in and there's no fill. And yes, it splits the pair base, but it's not as difficult to do that in this scenario because the whole game is not PvP. It's not like in Destiny and Trials where you split the player base between modes and you have these long wait times and everything because you're still going to fill with other players of your type, and it's going to be a fair experience for everybody. And the way that I would balance that is the higher the team composition, the more higher tier loot is spawned on the map, and they're also more concentrated in areas to promote action. If you're not going to have a battle royale style window that closes you in toward the end of an extraction, and you're going to leave it the same way, you have to make sure that there are hotspots, and there has to be ways that you interact with the game that will identify those hotspots, similar to how Hunt Showdown has clues that you can interact with that will then narrow the map or block out parts of the map so that you can see where the boss is. You can do that same thing. You can have areas that you interact with that will send off signals, and you could even make it to where when you send off a signal, a flare goes up where the loot's at, and everybody sees it, and everybody goes, so you know you're in for a fight. And there's none of this third-party nonsense because everybody knows that that flare is up there. So anybody that's there to fight is there knowing they're going to fight, not I'm going in there and I don't know, I'm on the edge of the map, and all of a sudden another team hears my shots and rushes me and kills me and wastes my time, right? Because in this scenario, when you're talking about the loot, the time that you're wasting is everybody's time that you're wasting. It's not just one team gets to dominate everybody. It's everybody that loses progress for everybody because it's a community situation. Again, to reiterate, you would take the collectibles that are in the area that you're trying to extract, and when you extract those, you would either sell them to some type of vendor or turn them into the faction, which will then create progress toward the dungeon unlock for that week. And so let's say, they have a set goal, similar to how Helldivers 2, for example, has a set goal for their kind of community-wide goals that gives you rewards at the end of the week. You could have something like that, but then when it fills up, it unlocks the dungeon for everybody, and you can go in with your crew of either 3 or 6 and clear it. And then you, as a person, keep your progress. So as long as you've cleared floor 100, you can enter 99, and as long as you clear 99, so on and so forth, the people who are behind can catch up. And so that way that there's no time getting there. Like let's say you start playing 3 weeks in, you can go back and knock out 100, 99, and 98, for example, and you're caught up with everybody. You don't got to time gate that if you don't really want to, and I wouldn't personally. I would say, let the catch up, so that way everybody's in the same goal and they're not working for different components because each level will have different things that you go for, different pieces of things that you're looking for that will contribute to the area. And so, if you're in solo, for example, you can work with others using proximity chat, which the game has to have proximity chat for this to work because again, we're trying to work as a team community-wise now. Even though we're fighting each other, we're still gathering resources. And that proximity chat, you can talk to people and say, hey, I'm just trying to grind these parts. Have you seen these parts? Do you have extra? Are you full? I can pick up the other ones. And you can run around doing that, or you can run around trying to steal stuff from other people. It's your choice because again, you're more sparse and solo, so it's better for your personal progress if you're running around and killing people and taking their things and giving it to your vendor so you can unlock your character unlocks as you're customizing your runner, right? And because these runners are printed again and again and again, you're in a situation where you have this other layer of lore that you can lay on top of the background lore that I've discussed. And now you have your own personal lore, your progress with whatever faction you choose. Those choices should matter. They should have differences so that you know, like, if I'm going down this route, this is how my character is developed. And each runner should be completely unlocked. You should be able to make your runner look how it wants. You should give the abilities to your runner that you want. So instead of picking a specific hero runner to have like the Blackbird ability, for example, you can then apply that ability to anybody and have that body style, have that ability, and you're that type of runner. So then you can just give that runner a type name, and so you know what you're doing. And so like if you're doing like espionage or stealth, that's your void, and then your shield could be heavy, however you want to call that runner, and then you just put that onto your character. And even if you were trying to balance it, you could even make it a cooldown where you can only change it once a day, or you have a limited amount of resets like you do on a relic in Destiny, where you can gather resources, then you can then pay to reset your character and then reload them up with abilities. And so that way you have more progress where you can fill out a complete tree and unlock all one tree. Then you can then pay to reset yourself and then work down a tree. So you have the ability to work through one type of class, a second type of class, and a third type of class, or fourth to however many classes they built, and you get all of those unlocked. That's like a completionist wet dream right there to be able to tick all the boxes, basically. So now you have fully customizable runners with proximity chat. You can make them how you want to look. You can take the gaudy makeup off. You can change some of your designs around. You have a store very similar to what Destiny has with Eververse, but less predatory, like way less predatory, right? You're buying things for your character that are cosmetic only, that are not play to win, that only if you want to buy them you have to. And there are both really good looking options that you can unlock in game through gameplay, whether it's on the marathon ship in the dungeon or whether it's on the PvP side. They're both separate things that you can, like, kind of challenges you can unlock to then give you those really cool looking sets. And you're going to have equally good looking sets. And in my opinion, you should have ways to augment the cool sets from PvE and PvP that you earn in the game. You can then pay to make them take another step up. Like say that you only get red and gold glows with one set, but if your favorite color is green, you can go buy like a augment that you can put into your set and you glow green. However you want to do it. You could even have it to where if you really want to min max stuff, you can have your ability to change your color in game as you're playing. You can pause and go in the menu and swap out your colors. So if you're on a map that's predominantly blue, you can change your glow to a map that kind of gives you a little bit of camo when you're running around. You don't stand out as much, glowing blue and blue versus growing neon green on a blue backdrop or a black backdrop, right? And you're just standing out. So those are things you can do through the Eververse version in this area that's not predatory. It's just something that if you want to do it, you can do it. That kind of gets a little bit of the pay to win, changing your glows, but if you have customizability to change your armor color, it's the same thing. So you really can't get rid of that. That's just somebody being like super sweaty. But the idea is that you can do that if that's something that's going to motivate people to buy these colors for their own personal maxing. It's really not going to make that huge of a difference, like a split second difference. And in Marathon, unless they change something with the mechanics of Marathon, it's not that sweaty to the point where like CS:GO study where like 0.012 seconds is going to make a difference, make or break. Your time to kill is not that wild, as long as you obviously tone down the sniping, the aim assist, like the bullet time and all the shit, the way that it tracks to your head. All of that needs to be toned down quite a bit on the precision weapons so that you have to be more precise with them and your precision is rewarded as well. And they're also hard to get. You have to build up to it or something. You have to take a weapon and mod it to give it the distance and the scopes and stuff like that. Or you can have a sniper, but it's only iron sights until you later on toward the end game. You can collect stuff that's only on the map that will make it into a scoped rifle. And then when you leave, you can't take it with you. For example, you got to get that scope again and get that gun again later. Kind of like, again, they're stealing a lot from Apex Legends. So it's kind of like the Kraber in Apex Legends. You fight, you fight, you fight, you grab the Kraber. Now you have a nice weapon to use for a period of time. It stays on the map. Another thing I would do is in the solo modes, I would make sure that you take out all the cheese. So, for example, if you're running solo, you have to be made aware that you can't run invis class and you can't run wall hack class. It's if you do that, everybody's gonna run invis. Then everybody's gonna be forced to run invis or wall hacks. If you don't want to run invis, so you're just gonna have all voids. You're just gonna have all people trying to scan each other the whole time. That's gonna be really cheesy and not fun gameplay to look at, not fun gameplay to actually interact with when you don't want to be stealth the whole time. You want to run in a class that's a running gun class. It's got cool abilities. You want speed, stuff like that. You would then either augment that class in solo to have a different ability that is more balanced, or just make it to where you can't run those two classes in solo. And people know that going in. When you try to choose that class for solo, you can't. You have to do that in duo or trio only. And that's, annoying, yes, but it's the best way to keep people from abusing that and just playing that style. In Hunt Showdown, everybody for the most part hates when people sit back with the longest range sniper and wait for somebody to try to come to a clue and then try to take a pick. And if they miss their shot, they extract because they're KD farming. You'll have similar stuff like that if you allow somebody to invis, run around, and do that kind of stuff. So you want to try to eliminate as much of the cheese as you can in solo mode so that solo players, who tend to be also the casual players, to be fair, like a lot of the solo players who are good stand out, and you see them all the time in Destiny. Like Esoteric is a great example. A lot of the larger streamers can play good solo, but you also have people who just log in this game and play for an hour or two, and they're just running lost sectors, and they feel good beating lost sectors, right? So you don't want to take that opportunity away from them to go out there and grab solo materials. One, because they're already grinding something that is going to take longer because the loot density is that sparse. And if the data shows that they're still struggling, you could even make like a PvE solo queue where there is zero players and it's all only solos and there's no PvP turned on. You're out there basically without PvP flag, but it's like really sparse and it's like super grindy. But if they want to do that and they want to buy the game and invest their time, they like the universe, they like the story, they can go in there and they can have their safe experience and they won't affect anybody else. They're there by themselves looking for like two things on the whole map, right? Because that's all they can end up extracting. And if that's the case, maybe even have it to where it's not even filled with other players. It's just you versus the AI because you're that casual, right? And that's an option that, because it's not too much development time, can be tweaked so that they have that choice. And their whole experience is PvE only. Until they obviously have to join with another team, there's still going to be a solo player teaming with other solo players for the content, like in Destiny, but they're not having to deal with losing materials that they get. So they never have that terrible experience of having a bunch of cool stuff and then dying, right? Speaking about Apex 2, I would find a way to make the health and the shields less Apexy, because right now it's exactly like Apex Legends to me. I can't unsee it. When you're there and you pull out the med and you're using the med and you're waiting for the timer, it looks exactly like you're pulling out your med canisters and your shield canisters in Apex. You just can't unsee it. You have to just figure out a way to make that look more futuristic, more marathon-like, even if it's like something wild, like you're pulling out like a box and the box is decompiling into you, just like characters do when you destroy a bot, when you kill a robot's body, and then they decompile into that green kind of blocky mist. You can do that and then have it look like it's like nanobytes coming down and recompiling you. Or you can use the caterpillars. I mean, if you can find a way to get those caterpillars that they usually rebuild you with when you're in those cryo chambers, you can have the caterpillars come down and run through your arm in the animation, and then from there they will decompile, and then your arm is back healed and stuff. However you got to do the animation, but make it look less like another game, because marathon needs to be marathon. It shouldn't be Destiny, and it shouldn't be Halo. It should kind of be its own thing. And if you're going with that vibe that is very different from Destiny and Halo in those aspects, outside of Siva maybe from Destiny, you can do that. And I'm surprised nobody's thought of that this whole time. Like again, the whole studio feels creatively bankrupt. It feels like they took all of the players, and based on the reports, all of the people, should I say, that are the kind of the rough to deal with people, and shoved them into the marathon game, and we're like, make it work, guys. You're pissing everybody off on the Destiny side. Do your thing over there, right? And so all the difficult people kind of got shoved to the side, and here they are. This is the result of too many cooks, too many chefs, right? Too many chefs in the kitchen, kind of thing. So now, hopefully, if they do make this pivot, that it'll be streamlined. It's like you got your one leader, you got the help that he needs, and that's all they are, the help that he needs. They're not going to override him, and you have this specific vision and goal. And anything that you get back up feedback wise, if it makes sense, make it happen. If the gamers talk about it, and it's something you can do in the game, and it's not super expensive, it's not going to change the whole direction of your game in a negative way, I don't see any reason to deny that feedback to some degree, even if you need to make like a compromise, be like, we can do this, but do it this way, and it'll have the same thing. Now that you've done the extraction, you have your community goals. You fight your way, even on the ship itself, through 4 and UASC forces to get to the boss encounter in the first place. So you're clearing your way to the boss room. You interact with the boss room, and it shows your character like a cutscene or something, using the materials to make whatever you need to, some kind of a really cool looking, very Geiger, and is like from Aliens, for example, from the Aliens universe style key that you interact with, or some robotic style key that you interact with, that ends up going into the console that's locking it, and then boom, the door unlocks, and now you have this boss arena in front of you, and you have to then fight, to clear that floor, which will then open up some type of a teleporter to take you up to the next floor where you don't know what's coming. So you have to be careful when you jump in the teleporter, because you could be ambushed by USC forces, 4 forces. 4 has a lot of different races and different ways that they fight. So you'll have a lot of different enemy types and varying enemy types. You'll have enemies fighting each other if you're still staying true to the Maryland lore. So you may just jump in and everybody's fighting everybody. You have this kind of 3-way battle, 4-way battle sometimes. If some of the enemies, part of the 4 are rebelling, and they're still dealing with UASC. So you're 4 fighting each other. UASC is fighting the 4. You're fighting all 3 of them. So that could be your situation when you get into the next area. And you can also gather materials from the marathon ship too. And there should be some required materials to unlock that are only picked up in the marathon ship, but they're easy to get because they're all in that same place. You don't have to go very far, and you can farm them indefinitely without being hassled because, again, the marathon ship is PvE only. There's no PvP on the marathon ship. That's like you would throw one PvP floor in there where you have to fight another team to get to the next floor. For example, like let's say the community is taking a while to get through one of the floors and they've been delayed for 2 weeks and you want to catch them up. You can have like the fight floor where you get in there and you fight like another team PvP back to back, and the team that wins gets to skip to the next floor only, and you have to stay on that floor until you beat another team. If you want to do that, I know that pisses a lot of people off, but in a PvP game, that would be kind of a cool concept, something to play with. And again, referencing Helldivers, it would be a situation where you have like a GM, somebody who is designed to pull the levers to make community progress faster if players are going too slow, or to slow people down. Maybe you can have additional side missions that pop up that you have to then leave the marathon ship and go to a new destination, like a small one, to gather something that delays you for the week so that you have to wait one more week because you've gotten too fast, or like wait later in the week. Let's say everybody's got what they need to unlock and reset is Tuesday and Thursday, they're done, and you want to delay them another day or two for the weekend when player population is high. You can have this additional mission come up that kind of keeps them from opening the boss chamber for a day or two. That the community will knock that out, and then boom, they get additional rewards for their time. It's not just a waste; like you're actually giving them additional rewards that are tangible, something that'll either help with player progress, unique customizable gear, skins, all that kind of stuff can be put into these additional side missions that pop up from here and there. And then that player doesn't feel like it's a waste of their time because they got something from it and it's tangible and they keep it in the game, right? And they get the unlock of the level. So we can have that scenario too, where the game adjusts based on the population size and just the pacing of the game. So make sure that it's not taking too long to unlock things. Puzzles aren't taking too long to be unlocked because there should be like mazes on certain floors. There should be puzzles to unlock certain areas to even get to the boss door. You should be having to do these puzzles while under fire. So you have to work mechanics where one person is doing the puzzle while two players are protecting, if it's a three-man team, protecting that player. And that should also play into mechanics and boss mechanics. And so that way there's incentive for players to go and play both modes, enjoy both modes. You unlock abilities, you unlock all these things in both sides, and there's this back and forth between the extraction mode and the PvE marathon ship. Back to the extraction gathering, back to the PvE marathon ship. And players can not even do the extraction mode and still contribute if they want to. They'll be a lot slower. And yeah, if they only spend, it's like you're spending your full price for the game because again, this should be at that point a full price game, right? $60 for something like this of this scope is not wild, and like having a season pass every now and then is not wild when you have this much creative material to go through. And if you want to spend that full price and only pay half the game, that's your prerogative if you don't like the rest of the game and you still really enjoy the marathon. Let's say you're a kind of person that works a lot and you don't really want to do attraction, so you just wait until the doors are unlocked and you just do your little quest to get to the boss door, and then you do your fight with your team and your boys and let everybody else deal with the extraction. That's fine too. I mean, it's your runner. However you want to live your runner's life is the way that it should be as part of the lore. Because again, you're the hero in that scenario. And going back to that, the lore on the runner having to be reprinted and reprinted, there could be also a cool system where it starts to take a toll on your runner. Like as you're playing the game and you're like on reprint 600, you start to hallucinate. You start to see things that aren't there. Enemies pop up that aren't there. The screen starts to kind of artifact a little bit, making you wonder: is this the game? Is this my GPU? Like, kind of throw people off a little bit. And you just realize, oh shit, it's because I've been getting killed again and again and again, and I need to take seriously my sickness. And maybe you could even go on a quest to cure your reprint sickness, similar to how exos have their minds break apart, and essentially they begin to rip their body parts off because they realize that they're not themselves into this exo body. Like their personality starts to kind of melt, and they start to self delete. You can have a similar scenario with the reprints. It's very similar to the Exo struggle in Destiny 2. And you reimagine it with Marathon in mind, right? With these reprints in mind. You can even have like a dog tag that your player has. So that way, when you kill some poor soul who's on like reprint 569, about to be reprint 70, you pick up that dog tag and you have those moments on stream where they're like, oh no, sorry, little guy. Like here you are, you're only on runner 10 and this guy's on runner 500, like in the disparity between players and skill. You can have those moments and stuff like that. Even if you want to have it to where like if you turn in their tag, it gets back to the runner in some way in their mail as kind of like an inside joke or whatever. I would say you could leave messages to the runner, but that can get a little toxic too. So, I mean, I'm not one to block the toxicity, but who knows? Who knows if it's even worth implementing a funny little system like that where you can send little stuff to each other on the dog tag. But that's just again another layer you can add to this idea of the runner being the central figure in the overall overarching story of the working caricature and the marathon ship and the four, but you have your own personal struggles being this runner again and again and again, having your fever dreams, breaking down, stuff like that could be pretty cool. Speaking of the runner itself again, another weird note that I just thought of is bag space. Like, what's up with the bag space, right? Like, it's like so stingy. I don't see why you can't grab a bag, for example, that you find, fill that bag with loot, and then take that bag and drop it into your main inventory, and it only takes up like 2 or 3 slots of bag space because you've got the stuff that you put into that bag's inventory. So you can have multiple bags. Does it make sense if you're dragging around multiple bags? And you're super strong and augmented by your cybernetic enhancements, you can carry a ton of bags. So I think that would be an inventory change that would be much more desirable to have the ability to take bags off other players, find bags out in the world, fill them with things, and then put those into your inventory so it takes up less space. And that'll be a nice way to juggle things, right? It adds a little bit of danger because you're there juggling with your inventory longer. You can get shot, but it also makes it to where you can carry more. So you spend your time more wisely on gathering materials and not have to be so shisty and trying to pick stacks like it is currently. So that'll solve some of the bias towards stacks and actually have people grab useful things that are needed for that week's requirements for materials. And going back to the materials, you can have weekly challenges or bounties similar to how Bungie operates that will give you bonus materials by gathering a certain sets of materials. So you gather enough materials, you get these bonus things, whether it be progress for your runner or whether it be bonus materials that go toward the effort that'll give you more currency so that you can kind of interact with the markets. And you can have trading markets, you can have all that kind of stuff too if you want, if it's workable. But the main thing would be to have at least a market like the black market is currently set up in Marathon, but more so a market that deals with all of the factions and the way that things are supposed to be used. There should be factions that are arguing with each other on the best use for the resources. There should be factions that secretly are trying to prevent the working caricature from being stopped because there's obviously going to be somebody that's corrupted. There's going to be some faction that is secretly trying to hamstring the mission, right? Slow you down so that when you give them stuff, it doesn't go to their community uh, efforts. It goes against the community's efforts, but you get personally rewarded more with a cap, right? And so that way you can kind of like ask yourself, do I want to be stingy and selfish and do this to my cap first? And then that also is kind of like a secret way to prevent players from filling up the bars too quickly, right? And so you kind of have that morality question in the game, and most people will probably make a guide like, yeah, fill this up first and then do everything else. But at least you have that choice if you're trying to help or if you're trying to be selfish. And again, that's another personality thing your runner can deal with and should have consequences for. Like the Drifter story was supposed to have consequences back in Destiny's expansion where you chose between the Vanguard and the Drifter, which never really came of anything. But if you had something like that that was really actually going to be followed through on, that'll have consequences when you're in the dungeon, that'll change what help you get or change mechanics or make the mechanics harder because you were dirty or easier because you did do it the right way. Those things can play out in the game and your team could get pissed at you, you pretended like you didn't secretly do this thing, and then you get there and like a shield that you could use to protect yourself from a boss mechanic isn't there because you did dirty and you were discovered doing dirty, and everybody's pissed at you now because the shield's not there and they have to fight harder. The fight is a little bit harder. Like stuff like that would be funny to have people go through and have those interpersonal moments, and that's what makes the game fun. To have those friction moments that hopefully don't break friendships, but still create this situation of like, you bastard, you were selfish and you sold to this faction, you're on the dark side kind of thing. And then they're like, whatever, man, I needed this upgrade, and we wouldn't have gotten here without it. That kind of stuff is fun to see and fun to be a part of, especially if you have a good friend group that can take a little ribbing back and forth. And so now, having said all that, with this concept and reimagining of the Marathon IP, the universe is so vast and so well laid that you have so much that you can add immersion wise that is currently looking very barren and feels super sterile in the current system. So now you can kind of take these layers and put them in the extraction portion, put them in the marathon ship. And yes, it'll have to be delayed for a long time, right? Because this isn't going to be something that could be done in 4 months, 6 months, but it'll absolutely make its return on investment at that point. Like let's say you spent 200 million right now. We don't know the number, and you spend another 200 million. This game will be able to perform on the level of Destiny 2, in my opinion. And so at that point, you've got like another minimum 2 years, possibly 4 years worth of game saga that you can create. And because the way that the marathon universe works, you have this looming sleeping god, and when you reach the looming sleeping god, uh, killing machine or delaying machine on the marathon ship, you clear that final boss. You have this huge story payoff to build up to, and then you can go past that because the universe resets to an alternate universe once that fight is done. And so then you can then make it to where maybe you fail at the last minute and boom, you're in a new universe and you've had this crazy payoff, but now you know how to fight this thing and you can get there faster. Or the whole progress system has changed, but you had that epic journey to get to that level one. You had your chance at the fight and it happens what happens, right? But now you have a way to kind of keep the story going. And people like it, people like it, people don't, they don't, but they played for those many years at that time. And as long as it's done well and done not in a way that pisses you off, like a Game of Thrones red wedding style kind of thing that just kind of thrown in there, but maybe one that's kind of hinted at the whole time. Like, you can find a way to make that work narratively if you wanted to, or you could just pay it off. Like you stop the working caricature, that's it, and that's the game, and then we get summoned somewhere else to fight something else that is left over. Like the leftover four. You can go and take them out in their universe and their place where they come from. However you want to set that up. But again, since the universe can be reset, you do this so many years into the future, and you can even cross over into Destiny's universe, Halo's universe to continue the story, and so you can address a lot of the uh, narrative issues because of the way that this universe is flexible and it's built flexible, and it's not being sacrilegious to the original lore. Like you're actually keeping within the original lore by doing that. So there should be no issue again paying full price or something like that. And again, 50 to 60 bucks with an annual pass and expansion system like Destiny, fair cosmetic store. It's money. It's just money waiting to be printed. And if they did that, they wouldn't even have to worry about GTA, because if you have a revival of a legendary IP like Marathon in a world where people actually revere the builders, the people, the devs who are building this, revere the source material and respect it, you will earn back the respect of your player and your gamer community, and you can alter the direction of the studio with such a move. GTA 6 will come out in May, and this game will come out beyond that, right? This game probably will be delayed another year, so we're looking September of next year. So people already had 6 months to play GTA, and it'll bring people that don't really even play GTA. Like the GTA audience will tend to have like a smaller attention span because it's an action movie, and this is not an action movie. This is going to bring people who want to play like almost like an RPG style game, who will compare this to, instead of it being like, like a Mission Impossible that comes out every year, it seems like, with this little action movie that you go knock out in a weekend. This is compared more to like an epic, like a journey like Star Trek: The Next Generations, or if you're talking like something like a Lord of the Rings epic, something that can be stretched out into this long time span. People that watching those shows, there's not going to be a ton of crossover, so you'll have a whole nother audience. You'll have some crossover, but you'll have a whole nother audience that's going to want to play a game that they can play over a long span, and not a game that they knock out a couple of missions and then they're done for a little while and they come back and they knock out some more missions and they do a couple heists and they run around, just messing around, shooting rockets at people online. Like this is not that game for them. This is where they're there. They're playing for the story. They feel immersed in it. They feel like they can affect it. Very much like the Helldivers community can affect their story. And if done right again and done well, and respect players' time, the minimal amount of time gating that's actually built into the story shouldn't be that annoying. We're not talking like this 3 week Rite of the Nine stuff that Destiny just pulled. We're talking just you get your progress through the week, Monday through Thursday. You unlock your dungeon around Thursday, Friday. You have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to clear the dungeon, and then Tuesday you get your reset and you repeat the cycle. And so again, each week you have that time, and you don't even have to worry about, I should have been there for this thing. Outside of the little small delaying events that you may miss with a little bit of FOMO, you can always catch up. If you start and marathon is 50 weeks in and you're at level 50, you can just grind the heck out of those 50 weeks and catch up. And now you're with everybody else and you're deep into the game, hours into the game, hundreds of hours into the game, right? that you've done, and you felt like you have had no stoppage, no friction, as far as in a negative way. Not good friction is a good thing. This negative friction of, oh, I got to go in and do this dungeon again. I got to wait till week 2 when the loot's better. I got to wait till the final week when the loot's better for that. There's no point in me playing the Rite of the Nine right now, for example, until the final weeks, or even worried about gold, because I'm going to have to do it again if I wanted to get, catch community, because everybody's done it the first day or two, and there's not a whole lot of competent players that are going to be left later in the week to even LFG with in the first place. So you wait till the final weeks, everybody's getting in there in the last minute before this new hype is coming, and then that's when you can actually play it. That stuff won't exist for those players that come in later, because they will have all of this content to get through. And when they pay their money, they'll get their money's worth. So that's the way that I would set it up. That's the thing that I would say, if you could just again convince the leadership to get out of the way of their own looming success with Marathon. It's there for the taking, and all they need to do is just let it happen. Hire somebody competent. Hire somebody that will not whatsoever deal with any nonsense that has nothing to do with the game, nothing to do with the universe, and just stick with making a game for gamers, not your personal identity, not you know who you're going to piss off outside in the world that has nothing to do with either a robot, or a UASC in your way, and you deal with those things first, and nothing in the outside world should mess with this. When you're at work, you're working. When you go home, you go home. You respect everybody's personal identity of themselves and treat them with respect, but you don't allow that personal identity of that person to affect the game negatively, because it's disrespectful to the player base, and it's really disrespectful to them, because in the end it creates these cycles of reaction videos of people who are going to have an opportunity to say vile things for people that don't deserve it, because they're just there to work, but they get tagged that way because they allow themselves and their personal identities, and they kind of self-insert themselves in these games to then bring down the quality of the game, and the confidence in the player base will dwindle when you see people who do that, because that has like a layer of incompetence tied to it, right? Like if you are allowing your own personal struggles to not enhance the game, like if you're like a struggling artist and your pain gets into the game in a way that connects people to the game, perfect, right? A lot of great music has been made in the darkest times for the darkest lives that people have lived. They've lived terrible lives, and their art is so touching that it transcends that terrible. They go through this crucible to harden themselves to create this person that creates this art that then reaches out and touches people. Like that's good art that comes from bad. But there's plenty of, in the gaming space, bad art that comes from bad. And when that's the case, that ruins and poisons your game. So you need to hire somebody that will deal with that and cut that out. Like you badge in, you are a Bungie employee, you get along with everybody, you treat everybody with respect. None of this crying behind each other's backs and all of that. Like we're a team, we work together, we have the same common goal. If you love this game, great. If you don't love this game, there's another studio over there that you can go with if you want to go deal with the Destiny side, or you can hit the door, right? Because those are your two choices. If you want to transfer over there where they're going to deal with your feelings, great. If not, Marathon is here. We're on a tight schedule, and we need to make this game within a year, right? This epic game within a year. So that would be my personal. If I was the leader, if Bungie said, "Hey, we're hiring you and your vision to make this happen," there would be pissed off people, right? Because not everybody who has personality issues is going to handle feedback appropriately, but those people need to go so that the game can be successful. The environment in the building should be one of collaboration. It should be a borderline happy. You don't want people to be too happy, because then they get too lazy and they don't work. But you don't want people to feel like they're embarrassed, or they're being talked down on, or their feedback isn't taken seriously. If the studio is not serious, if you're spending too much time, bragging to everybody about your car collection, or trying to get in every woman's pants that you hire, like all of that is nonsense that doesn't belong in the studio. And anybody that has been allowing that, even with, you have an HR department, I mean, like anybody that allows that to go on, like they deserve to be fired and they deserve to be ridiculed, right? Because that's not what you're there to make games for. We don't I mean, some people do, right? Get me wrong, don't get me wrong. Some people get into gaming to try to have these power dynamics and all that kind of stuff because they see that as an opportunity. But those people are not the ones that need to be in leadership, and those people are not the ones that need to be anywhere near Marathon, because it is so poisoned at this point. It is so toxic at this point. The only way to fix it is to fix it with an army of people that have a combined goal, that have like a Expedition 33 style of grind, to make it happen. You need to make marathon musically. You need to make it digitally, like visually appealing to the point that everybody sees that and says, you know, Expedition 33 is one of the greatest games of all time. Marathon is not that damn far from it, you know. So that's going to be kind of your tent pole, and that's why everybody's crying about Expedition 33, because it showed that a focused group of people who really like each other and really like source material that they're working on can make such a beautiful product, and Marathon can be that if they have the right people. And you better believe that if years from now Marathon comes back around and this is what it looks like, everything that I talked about today, because again, a lot of this stuff I just thought of on my own. I haven't really been watching a ton of the how to save marathon videos. The only video that I think I've really seen anything that inspired me on this was looking at Lucky 10P reacting to Destin's video recently, like 3 or 4 days ago, maybe even closer to 5 or 6 when this is released. And I saw a little bit of Asta Cross's video, kind of brainstorming on, trying to put exotics in the game to get into Destiny and all this stuff that you don't need. I none of that influenced this idea that I have, and so I know it's a longer video. I know, like, TLDRs are preferred, but if you've watched all the way to the end, I appreciate you guys for taking my feedback. And if you happen to then tweet that out to Bungie, or find a way to share this so that it can get seen, if you think this is a good idea and you're like, well, dang, I want to play this game, share it out, like and subscribe, of course, to help the algorithm. And hopefully we can fix Marathon, because I was looking forward to playing something in the Marathon universe, not this, right? And that's why the title is, again, do I even want to save this? Because people doesn't deserve a bailout. Mr. Over Delivery doesn't deserve a bailout. But I would do that to save Marathon and the devs that work, the good devs that work in Marathon. And then maybe we can kick these guys out with the success we have, down the road, right? So it obviously doesn't bode well for them to hire me saying that, but I don't care. Like, they need to, put their big boy pants on, hire somebody they disagree with that's going to make this game happen. And if they can't do that, then they don't deserve to be in the position. And if they do that, then all respect to them. Let them get their money, let them get their billions for making a good decision. Sometimes it takes you to swallow your pride and just to get out of the way, and just to make sure that the building doesn't burn down as you're the CEO. Your job is just to make sure that the lights are on and the people can keep working. And then you let the creative people that actually have the drive and ability and the imagination to get things done, to let them get things done and to do it effectively. No wasted days. So again, Bungie, if you happen to see this, and you're looking to hire a visionary, as crazy as it would be, whatever, I would reluctantly agree, because that's not what I want to do. This is not my career path, but I absolutely would oversee something like this, just to make sure it doesn't ever get derailed and we get what I'm looking for in Marathon, or something similar to what I'd be looking for in Marathon. This epic adventure versus this little small contained pet project that this turned out to be. Somebody's ego project, basically, in the end, and their ego is now hopefully smashed, and they can start over again, stand up, and be a man or a woman, and get this job done, going forward. So thanks very much again for wrapping up the video. I'll see you guys in the next one. I haven't made a whole lot again because of health issues. Sorry for people who haven't subscribers who haven't seen from me for a while. But I will be dropping some content whenever there is content that I can feel useful on. Again, I make mostly guides and sometimes a lore video here and there. But again, one more time, I just want to highlight, thank you all my current subscribers who stuck with me, and I'll see you guys in the next video.